Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of I Am Legion for Dying Light 1 and 2. My name is Jason, the creator of the mod, and I just pushed out another update. I wanted to do a quick summary for 1.4 I3. So 1.5 is still in the works. I'm continuing to get in as much feedback and continue to work through those bugs every day at this point to try to get you this new epic update that's coming. It's going to be the biggest update for the mod that's ever been released, but I promise you it's taken a lot of work to make sure the balancing is correct. One of the key things for this next update is that it could have the potential to impact your saves, so I'm doing as much as I can to test internally before releasing this update. So please stay tuned for coming updates. Please stay tuned for the coming news. Hopefully that'll be out here very shortly. Excited to get these features out to you guys. As a recap, what will be coming with 1.5 will be the new armor update, which has been ongoing since June, the survival effects, which have been a big thing for a lot of time now. I'm still working on balancing for that, but super excited to get you guys some previews of what that looks like, along with a new spawn system that I'm creating that's completely custom from the ground up, continuing to balance and test that system as well. Looking forward to introducing that system and showing you guys what I've got in store for that. But 1.5 will also include a ton of new bug fixes and feature updates that I'm getting in as much as possible while continuing to go through the updates. Please bear with me as I am continuing to try to duck and cover as much as possible to get this update out to you guys. It's been a long time coming. It's going to be awesome. So let's go ahead and dive through and let me show you what I've got in store. So 1.4 I3 just released with this new launcher. Basically, it's just so you guys are aware, I've removed some of the things as far as the shortcuts that are printed out. As always, you can see the updates if you just scroll down. All the latest updates are included in this installer, so if you have any questions, just make sure to read through here. You can see everything that I've added. But when we go ahead and install this, what it's doing different now on the back end is actually installing these new applications into the root directory. For now, I haven't set this up to where it's immediately detecting this directory. I could start to kind of embed the mod config a little bit more, but I really want to make sure that instead of doing that, that we still have some manual process for the mod config, just so I can get in as much feedback from you guys as possible before we start hard coding things. But just be aware that when you install this, you should get two new icons onto your desktop. First is going to be for the mod config. Second is going to be for the save game tool. The save game tool just got an update as well. I apologize for any of you that got an error when trying to launch the save game. I will mention that in testing right before I did this video, I did notice that I was still getting an error. So to fix that, you need to go ahead and go to that shortcut. Just go to the I Am Legion Reborn install path. It's going to bring you here to the root directory. Just go ahead and delete this file that's called stat.json. The problem that I ran into is that I'm writing too much of my software too similar, and so there was a naming issue where the mod config and the save game tool were trying to utilize the same file, and they basically were screwing each other up. If you delete that state.json and then go ahead and launch both of these again, it'll recreate those files and it'll fix that problem. So if you're new to this and you haven't seen this before, the save game tool will allow you to create backups for all your save games. This is going to be critical going into 1.5 because I want to make sure that you guys are getting the best backups and the best saves for all of your data, and also being allowed to set which ones are vanilla saves and which ones are modified saves. To be able to pull this off so I can really find out how useful this tool is, I'm actually having the tool itself identify if you've installed I Am Legion on that save game. So it's actually parsing your save game file and determining that I Am Legion is installed onto that save game. And so hopefully that'll help you identify which ones of your saves are modified and which ones are vanilla so that you can back them up into separate folders. So to go ahead and get started, just as always, I've got this linked in a dozen places. If you're not aware, your actual save game folder is inside your Steam directory, user data. Check out the digits. There's a link in the description. There always will be. There's a link on the optional downloader. There's a link in the README. There's a link on the front page of the Nexus. There's a link about everywhere I can think of. I think there's a link on the info page, and there's a link inside the Discord posted about everything every 30 seconds. So if you have any questions about where that's located, make sure to check the media. Once you find that path, go ahead and hit select folder. And when you do that, it's going to go ahead and load up that interface. And let me go ahead and zoom the camera a little bit here. Basically, it's just going to load in a couple of things. It's going to check your save game slots, and it's going to determine, based on the save game slots, which of your files are modified. It's also going to let you know if it's detected I Am Legion on each one of those saves or not. And so because of that, for example, for this one, it's letting me know that this top one, it did detect the mod. These other ones, it didn't detect the mod. So we can back those up into a vanilla save. You can create a backup name and go ahead and hit backup, and it will immediately go ahead and create a backup folder for these saves. And the best part of this is that after it creates a backup of these, it will also create a restore backup. So now you can actually go in here to each one of these slots as you're going in the future and restore these back. So if you want this dynamic tool to be able to back up your saves while you're playing, you can also press Shift F5 while you're playing the game, and the key binding will actually go ahead and save the game as you're playing. So if you want to kind of have a continuing save as you go, you can also use this tool. If you're really finicky about these saves, if you really want to make sure to back things up, you can also back up by individual slots. So you don't have to back everything up. You can just back up individual things as you go. All right, let's go ahead and dive in to the mod config, and let me show you guys this update. This save game tool will now create a save game.json, and inside of there is all of the directory, the pathing, and then which backups you've already created. So the next time you launch, basically, and I'm going to have to double check that because it shouldn't ask ever again, but it does look like it's remembering the previous area that I opened. I'll have to double check that. The idea here is that this should not be ever asking you again, and so I'll make sure that that's fixed in this next update. It's only on the videos that I catch it. All right, down to the mod config. So for the mod config, I've been working on the back end as you guys are continuing to use the tool and give me feedback. I've been trying to work to try to ensure that all the features are working as expected. When you first launch this mod config, it's going to launch and it's going to ask you for a folder. This is asking you for the Dying Light folder. And so there's a shortcut on your desktop that's being created when you install the mod. You can go to your desktop and just follow that path and hit select folder. That's the fastest way to just open the mod and make sure that you have that direct path. And when you do that, it is going to create that state.json in that directory as well, and that will back up that data, so you shouldn't have to load it again. Additionally, when you first load up, it's going to start looking at your configs. So I've pushed out a new version of the configs to your system. So with this latest version, it should start to identify whether or not you have old configs inside your files or whether you have the latest configs. So with each one of these, as it's actually going through, it's going to create a backup in this backup folder that is getting upgraded, and it's not going to do it right now because it's already done it. So it's actually already creating that backup and moving all those files. So it's upgrading those files as it goes. So as it identifies that a file needs to be updated, it's going through and creating that update and backing those up. So this latest version should properly update your files and make sure that you're on the latest version of the config. And what that's doing on the back end is actually adding all of the resources that I'm adding inside of the mod config. And so let me show you guys a little bit of what I've added in the latest version. So one of the biggest things with the reports that I've been getting is that people, when they've been saving their modified configs, have been adding small syntax errors. I've tried to add the default values along the top as a guide so that it can kind of help you keep an eye on what the actual value type is, but you can also use these ticker arrows along the side as well, and that will help show whether or not it's a whole number or whether it's got a decimal point in it. So for example, with the latest version, it should remove some of those syntax errors to where you can't actually add those inside the files. So as you're going through and you're accidentally saying like, okay, I want this to be 1, it should go behind you and actually fix that if it has to be an integer or a float value. And so this will go a long way to help ensure that your game won't crash. Probably the biggest thing that I can recommend here is that when you're saving your config, when you're saving to the file, make sure you're reading the actual values that are being saved onto your config. So if we go here, for example, if we go and load Survivor, so let's apply this config, we'll go ahead and hit load. And then once we've loaded that config, we can go back to test and hit load. And you can see here it didn't apply any files. That's because we've kept it the exact same. But let me go modify one of these really quickly. So let's actually set that to 1. And we're going to hit save config again. And then we're going to load our Survivor file. That's going to set that value back. And then we're going to hit load again. So you can see down here, it's letting you know exactly what values are being changed. Please keep an eye on what is changing on this arrow here. If you see that it had a decimal and then it gets changed to something that doesn't have a decimal, that's where something's slipping through the cracks and I haven't yet had a chance to shore up the UI. Just be aware that that is still possible, probably less likely in these tick values versus the ones that are the string values. So say for example, you go in here and you accidentally set this to which I need to set these to like a drop down or figure out a better system for these. But say you accidentally remove the X here and hit save. It's going to actually should actually let you know that you've made this change. So you can see here that it was this value, it was max, and then it got saved as ma health. I mean, it's an easy way to spot a syntax error. You just have to take the time to look for it. With those types of values, they will absolutely crash the engine. And so if you loaded that into the game, it is going to go in there and actually crash things out. And so then you're going to be wondering what the hell's happened. This is where a key location comes into play. And I know I've mentioned this on the Discord channel, I've mentioned it on the Nexus, but while I got you on the video, I'm going to go ahead and mention it again. This is where your documents folder comes in handy. This is where you need to go to your documents, Dying Light 2, out, logs folder. Again, check the bottom of this video. You'll find a link to this. If you sort by modified date, it's going to give you a log of the last time you played the game. In here, you can search for the term syntax or ERR, and it's going to let you just kind of browse through the file, and you can just very quickly see if you have a syntax error. If you have a syntax error, more than likely the file is going to be much bigger size than all the other files. So let's see if this one's got one from my testing earlier. I'm sure I can find one in here. There we go. So this is an example of where it found it's not a syntax error, it's where something was not set correctly in the engine, and so the engine was crashing out, and so I was slowly having to fix those errors, and so we should have no more errors after I fix that problem. But it takes a little bit to get used to that, but just know I'm going to ask for one of these logs, so please just be aware where these are located. So to dive back in, I added the ability to fix that. I've also added a new feature which allows you to merge configs. So let's say, for example, in the AI behavior, which maybe isn't a great example because most of these are really set by the difficulty, let's use something like inventory. So say I go in here and I create this custom inventory settings where I want 48 slots for each one of my weapons, equipment, consumables, and ammos. So let's go create a new config. We're going to save this config. It's not going to be saved as test. We want to actually go in here. We'll call this Survivor, because make sure to remember this is based off the original Survivor loaded config. It's important to know what difficulty you have loaded, and say increased inventory. Just like that. And then say, for example, that as I've been playing through, I actually really enjoyed the settings that I set up for this config, but I realized that I don't want to play Survivor anymore. I'm getting bored with Survivor. I actually want to go and upgrade this to Ultimate or to Insanity. You can go in here and click this Merge Configs button, and now you can go in here and actually, so you can either create a name or it'll create a name for you. If we wanted to go up to something like Insanity, you can go down here and select the Survivor increased inventory and hit Merge. When it says merge, it's going to let you now know down in the bottom this new file. It looks like it did double that name there. Not sure why it doubled that name, but please bear with me as I continue to work out those errors. So we have this new config. Let's go ahead and load the original. So if we see here, we've loaded Survivor. If we want to go ahead and load this new merged config, you can see here that when we load this up, it's making all of these changes to upgrade all of the presets inside the game to Insanity, but it also saved our inventory stats. So if you want to go in there and make really specific changes, using this merge config setting is the best way to go in there and make sure that whatever unique systems, for example, you go and create a very unique system inside of lot picking or the UI or some of the new features I'm about to show you, and you want to save those, you can save those to configs in the future. And even if you have a couple of different ones, so say for example we do have these two different ones, let's go in here and say Insanity, insane merge test. You can actually, so the interface doesn't actually show selecting multiple, but you can actually select two. So these two are selected and we can hit merge. And so it will actually save between those two files. So you're actually going to apply all those values that have been set up to that time. It will actually go through and apply all those different values to the system. It's a little finicky sometimes because of the way that it compares between the two, what is the appropriate one that you want. So it won't always save the exact one you want. So the best frame of reference with how I've written the code is that the default is going to be your base config is your difficulty. So make sure you're setting the right difficulty because that's important here. And then the left config is going to have the most priority. So after the Insanity settings, it's then going to be this left config, and then any additional unique features will be loaded from the right config. So if you have like an entire system worked out, or you have a config that you really have set a lot of things, make sure you're doing that merge on the left panel, not the right. It'll probably still work, but you know, I haven't fully tested the system to see how many things, you know, how many different things could actually get mixed up. So the best practice is go to the left. So let me show you guys the new system I added. So this was something that I wanted to do earlier on in the game. I actually did it inside the mod config and then set some of my own things. People weren't in love with my settings to start with, so I pulled that out. But I'm excited to let you know that I've brought it back in, which is the ability to actually go through and configure the visuals, the colors inside the game. So originally I modified the HUD and the map and all the different things inside the game. For this one, I've actually added a custom system which will allow you to create custom colors for the Survivor Sense. So these are all the different colors that have been created for the Survivor Sense. And so once you actually have these different ones, I apologize, there's still a formatting issue with these lines going across and creating this stack, this vertical stack here. So the best thing to do is just read this one right here in the middle as it lines up to each one. Obviously the color there helps. I am not currently able to, I'm still working on the ability to turn this into an actual color picker to where you can select each one and actually set this color into here. It has to do with how I'm creating the initial interface and how it's parsing and storing this data. It's going to have to get way more complex to do so. So to bear with me, I've added a color picker here at the top. So if you go up here to the very top, there is this color picker. You can actually click that color that you see there, and you can actually select the different color. And when you do that, and I forgot to fix this one bug for this interface, it was working earlier and then it did it right there before I quit. This new color is going to be added right here to the top. So whatever you're selecting inside the interface, which I can see right now is not actually adding, so I will make sure to go fix that prior to the release of this And so I do apologize again, only while I'm trying to do my videos. But the color picker should go and update properly. You can then use those values to where you can then input those values into these different colors. It's a little bit of a manual process, but I promise you this is easier than doing it manually inside the mod config. I do not currently have a refresh button, so after you've gone through and you've set a different color, say for example, we want to darken this one. This is going to be white, so actually let's go ahead and darken gray here. So say we want to go ahead and actually darken the color for gray, we can actually go in there and make those changes. And then when we actually say load the config again, so in this case we're going to go actually and load a config. Well, actually we'll go ahead and load the data pack 2 again. So we'll go under here and load that data pack 2 again. And once we do that, it's going to fight me all the way because it's already loaded. I'm going to switch really quickly. I apologize. I'm going to switch over here to this other config. Once I switch over to this other config, I've been meaning to add like a refresh button in the interface. Now that I have color in there, it's probably going to be required. But once you switch this interface or update this interface rather, it's going to actually ask you or it's going to actually update the color rather so that you can see what this new color is. So let's go ahead and load this back in. You can also just close the application and launch it again. This color actually is the same because it didn't save into the file. So we're going to go ahead and hit save. I apologize. Let's hit save mod pack. There we go. And then we'll actually go ahead and, can we save this one as well? There we go. So we'll save to that file as well. And so when we go back in here and load this in, which in this case it may be easier at this point to go through and using the color picker set those colors, and then when you load back in it may be easier at this point to just go back and confirm that all the colors are the way you want them and load them in. But anyway, besides the point of this system, I'm going to continue to refine this system and try to clean this up. It's not exactly how I want it, but it's going to require a lot of data restructuring for something that you guys may or may not use. Please let me know your feedback if you actually really want to use this system, if you feel like that's something that you'd absolutely love to have in this application. I kind of threw it in as like, you know, I'll definitely use it. I don't know if you guys will. You can also pull up like a hex code website. It'll save a lot of time to just pull the colors as you go. But here's actually how you would apply this. So the next tab is actually going through and setting the alpha qualities and the duration for how long you see these visuals. And then this is my favorite part, is the next side is actually applying these different colors down to the different enemies inside the game. So I've actually gone through and specified most of the different biters, the different infected, and the different virals inside the game so that you can basically decide and pick how you have each one of these different enemies show up and what visualization will actually be showing for their skeleton when you hit the Survivor Sense button. And so I posted some pictures earlier. If you haven't seen the pictures, make sure to check out the screenshot compare, the gameplay share in the Discord. It's great stuff. I'm pretty excited to have a little bit of diversity across that Survivor Sense so that it has a slight different meaning for each color that you're seeing. I've also added some global values here for the Survivor Sense. So for this first one for the visual settings, these are more about the wave and the different durations versus the detection of actual like AI. You can use the AI tab here to actually increase the range that you see those skeletons on the map. I have gone through and tried to rebalance this for the different difficulties so that you have a better balancing for the different ones. The plan for this is to bring in more of the legendary armors and different tools that are being created through the new armor update for 1.5 so that in the future you have actual real world tools, not real world, but in-game tools that will allow you to see further rather than all of a sudden you can just see further because you're setting it in the config. So stay tuned for lots of legendary tools coming as well, so that you can have different effects inside the game. A second location that I've added, another one of these color features, is the UI section. So the UI section I've added as well the HUD, the map. So if you want to go in here and change the different map icons, and then the actual map locations on the map as well. Some of these may be mixed between the HUD and the map. I'm still doing some testing. And then the binocular settings, this is also the effects that you see when you're using your binoculars and spotting enemies in the distance, and then some more additional colors here for different enemies when they do different effects. So some outline values and also some summoning values as well. So if you want to go through and make these settings, all of this will now save into the config. And so this is a good use case for starting to store backups of your configs and starting to play with this concept of color inside the game, being able to change these rapidly and load these in. So say, for example, you want to go through and you want to make an updated color palette and you want to see what that looks like. You can easily load or first save your config with all your settings for your color. And then when you're ready, go ahead and select the default conditions and load that back into the system so that you can see a comparison between one versus the other. So if you want to do rapid testing, the best way to do this is to set your directory, load in the configuration, load in your local changes, and then save each one as you go out to the mod pack, quickly launch the game, test those changes out, see which ones you like, see which ones you don't like, and hopefully that'll help you have a better idea of how you're modding the game. Also, I've added one more feature here, which is the delete configurations. If you click this button, it will load up these local configs. You can go to each one of these and actually delete out these configs as well. So if you have ones in there that you made just while you were testing things and you just want to delete them within the application, you can do so without having to leave the application. You can also go to the share configs folder. That will open up this config folder where the actual mod configs live, and you can just delete those configs here as well. So if you just want to drag select, you made 100 of these things and you just want to drag select all of them right here, you don't actually have to dive in to the delete configs. I just wanted to add that if you wanted to stay inside the system instead of having to go out here to the folder. All right, guys, looking forward to your feedback. I've also tried to rebalance some of the spawn systems inside the map. There seems to be a very large amount of volatiles on the map right now, especially I'm not sure, I'm still getting very different results when going offline versus online with the event that's live right now. What I was basically seeing is that, as always, you basically can't launch the game and just look in your general area to determine if what you tried to do worked or not. You actually need to go run to the point where it changes the cell. At night and day, it's kind of hard to know where that begins and ends. The difference that you'll normally see is that on the transition from day to night, it's that distance that you have to travel before all of a sudden you start to see screamers show up and some of the night spawns. There's actually a distance you have to travel before it'll reload those cells and repopulate them. I'm also seeing a little bit that makes me believe that some of that information may be baked into the saves. It's kind of hard to know because some of those spawns seem like it's storing where they were when you left versus where they are when you load back in. Some of those exact positions of enemies, it feels like it's the same between. It's kind of hard to tell, but please make sure to just do some thorough testing. As always, if you have a bug, make sure to send it to me on the Discord. Make sure to use that bug reporting location on the Discord as well. Please make sure to check out on the Start tab. There are links to all of these different settings as well as the Patreon. Thank you guys so much, my ongoing Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for your support. You can get to links to everything within the mod tools now. So if you have questions about where something's located, you can actually probably find it right here. If not here, you can go find it in the info section of the Discord channel. All right, guys, thank you so much. Sorry for the longer video. Hope you guys are enjoying out there. Hope you guys are doing well. Happy gaming. Stay happy out there. See you guys next time.